I'm Jon Coffelt. I was born in Tennessee. I did a lot of my work in Alabama, and I live in Brooklyn, New York now. And I'm an artist. I paint and make constructions in duct tape and some book art. My miniatures clothing started when my grandfather passed. I had his clothes under my bed, and my mother said, "You should do something with those clothes." And so I thought, well, my grandfather and I played Barbie dolls on Saturdays, just about every Saturday. And I thought, well, maybe I could make something small like a Barbie doll would wear with his clothing. So I started working that way. I did my grandfather's pajamas, the ones he died in. Once I did my grandfather's pajamas, I had several other people say, "Can you do this for me or do that for me?" And that's when I started doing things for other people. But at the same time, I was deciding that I wanted to use the fabric in the clothing to be the same fabric as it was on the original. So in other words, the right sleeve for the small right sleeve, the left sleeve for the small left sleeve, and the collar for the collar, etc. I think with the small clothes, people get an emotional impact because it tells them to pick out things that are their favorites, and a lot of those are their parents or grandparents, sometimes children, and it becomes emotional because they see them for the first time after they've been destroyed and remade. They react together in an odd way because no matter what show they're in, they always have a narrative that passes between them. I've never had two pieces that didn't somewhat tell a story with each other. Well, for one thing, I'm very anal retentive, and a lot of my work is about chaos out of order and order out of chaos. What I do with my work is, with the miniatures, is I make these small stitches, and the stitches become part and parcel of what I do with the larger pieces. I started in the 80s, the late 80s, working with Willie Smith for footwear, and I was with him for a few years. And I had taken these courses at Auburn University on visual photometry, and I was one of the only two guys who took that class. The whole taught it. So, Willie, he sought me out and asked me if I would work for him, and I told him yes. Yes, my sister found it in all my stuff, and she said, "You've got to make a small one out of this." And when I saw it, I was like, "Oh yeah, I'd forgotten about that." So it kind of was a nice, gesture that she came up with. That I worked very hard on my art, and I try to be as unique as possible. Sometimes I go out of my way just to make sure it's not like anybody else's. That I did for several other people that are kind of well known. And when I do things like that, sometimes they want the clothing back, and I don't let them have the clothing back because they have a weird situation with them. Sometimes they cry, sometimes they're happy, it just depends. But I usually give them the small piece first because in doing that, it kind of allays any feelings that they have for the piece that I've had to discard. And over the years, I've done a piece for Dolly Parton. I've done a piece for John Waters and Matushka, and the other pieces for Ruth Bernhardt. And I did a piece for Catherine Wright, who is Frank Lloyd Wright's daughter. And let's see, I think that's about it. Yeah. I showed them at Space 11. It was a show that was, we tried to decide which way we wanted to show the work, so we started using a clothesline all the way across and using these tiny clothespins to put the pieces together. And when they were put together, that's when the narrative started. When as soon as we started putting pieces together, then it just took on a life of its own. Everything was it just kind of fell into place. It's hard to describe how how that happens, but it always happens. And I've shown them in London, I've shown them in Paris, I've shown them in one of my biggest shows was out in Minneapolis, and that show had 202 pieces in it, and it had a catalog that went with it, and also a video.
I guess the most interesting thing about me is that I tried to do as unusual work as possible with unusual materials, or if they're not unusual materials, they're used in an individual way.